Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression video on a house I've never talked about before. This is actually the very first time the house is being featured on my channel, and it is from the House of January scent project. And today we're going to talk about a fragrance called Burvuvu. How's that for artwork? That's actually not a bad descriptor of what the fragrance is like. So this is their little packaging. John Beeble very kindly sent me a sample set, nice enclosed card, and business card for him. If you guys are interested in his little business card, if I can get it out. There it is. So there he is, John Beeble, creator. So thanks to John for sending this to me. I will say I've been a big proponent of houses sending out sample sets to people because a 2 ml sample, is enough for you to give your impression on a scent to decide whether, it's enough to do a video, to be quite honest. I call these videos early impressions, but it's not enough to where it's going to influence you to say something you don't believe. No one's going to lie about a 2 ml sample, but if you're giving them a $500 bottle of Xerjoff or Roja, well, maybe that's a little different deal. So I've always been a fan of these samples, and giving out, even if you wanted to do discovery atomizers to people, give them the 7.5 or the 10 ml discovery atomizers. Let them test that. And then if you see that your favorite YouTube creator has gone out and purchased a bottle, like for example, like I did with Russian Adam's work, he sent me a bunch of samples I've never smelled before, and I went out and started buying bottles. I loved his work. And if it wasn't for brands sending me sample sets, I never would have been able to do videos on things like Parfums Cortana or Papillon, Liz Moore's House of Papillon, which I discovered some amazing fragrances and put out some great videos thanks to that sample set. So I am not opposed to brands sending out sample sets. I am opposed to brands sending out $1,000 bottles of fragrances to people or $500 bottles of fragrances to people, and the person getting it and of course saying it's the best thing in the world because they don't want the gravy train to stop. I completely understand the beef there, but these, I have no problem with this. So okay, so again, thanks to John for sending me the sample set. You'll be hearing a lot about January Scent Project on my channel over the next couple weeks. He has agreed to come on and do an interview at some point, but first I need to get to know his work. So this is what this process looks like as I just throw it on the floor. So this is what this process looks like, getting to know his work. But first, we're actually going to have a double unboxing because that's how it goes on Channel Ram. One of these I purchased. One of these is an outrageous package, maybe one of the biggest packages. I don't know what's in here, but I think it's maybe the biggest box I've ever received, ever, when it comes to fragrance, packages. So the first one I'll just show you is a normal size box, and this is actually from a friend in the fragrance community. I won't say who because I don't know if he wants to be named, but maybe one day we'll announce that we're doing a, kind of like a group review of this fragrance together. And that fragrance is this. That fragrance is a rare discontinued fragrance, which I know that is usually what I end up going for, but it is a rare, discontinued, hard to find masculine, and I am stoked to have found it. And this is Metropolis by Estee Lauder. And look at this. Just a beautiful sight to behold. Rich Mitch says this is one of the greatest ambergris notes, accords he's ever smelled. Let me just cut the tape. Okay, here we go. Metropolis, come to daddy. Let me see you. Let me take a good look at you. Oh, you're a beauty. Look at this. It's a pretty damn classy bottle. It's very similar to the, it is very similar to the Estee, the Lauder pour Homme, or Lauder for men, if you will. Are you a twist? Yes, you are. Okay, so this is a summer fragrance for me. This is the kind of stuff I want to wear in the summer. So yes, Metropolis, exciting, exciting times. In fact, you're rare enough that you get to live in your box. Many fragrances don't get to live in their box, but I think Metropolis will get to live in its box. So that'll be a really exciting one to get to know. And Metropolis was apparently a flop, a big flop. It came out in 1987. And the face of the advertising campaign was the American actor Bruce Boxleitner. Bruce Boxleitner. And it's lavender, green notes, fresh notes, peppermint, clary sage, geranium, carnation, amber, patchouli, vetiver, leather, and musk. And Rich Mitch was a big fan of this. As soon as he smelled it, he told me, like, dude, you have to go find yourself a bottle. And I very luckily did. So excited to get to try Metropolis. Now, also, since a friend built these, I was given some samples, some very kind samples. And so we've got all kind of good stuff in here. All kind of good stuff. Azzaro Pour Homme Intense from 92. Never smelled that one. House of Matriarch's Blackbird. Exciting stuff. Very exciting stuff. Lord of Misrule. Never heard of it. Oud Elegance's Incense. So yes, a bunch of little samples to run through. So fun times. Okay, so let me show you guys this second box. Because again, as far as boxes go, there is usually a pretty standard size that comes when it comes to fragrance boxes. Look at this. Look at this thing. Look at this monster box. What is going to be in here? This is from Joanna. Thank you, Joanna. I believe it's Hutchison is her full YouTube handle. I believe she goes by Joanna Hutchison. But let's see what's in here. I'm almost scared to open this. What's it gonna be? That is some packaging. That is some serious, serious packaging. Huttenstone, I'm sorry. Not Hutchison. Wow. That is some serious packaging. Okay, so here we go. See what we're gonna get. Look at this. Look at this. Wow. What a creation. Look at this. J. Huttenstone. Literal stone? Sorry, my brain's a little slow. Al-Khatt. No, I've never smelled this. This is interesting. Xerjoff Al-Khatt. No, this will be a new one for me. This will be a good quick hit video. You go up there with all your sample friends. What else do we have in here? Tinctures by J. Huttenstone. Alcohol and single natural materials. Vanilla bean tincture. Sassafras root bark tincture. That is outrageous. I can't wait to sniff some of this stuff. A book? I got a book? Lamania, a Witch. Never heard of it. Book included Lamania, a Witch by Georgia Taylor. Does anyone know this? It's outrageous. Thank you, Joanna. Let's take a look. What is in here? I'm curious. I just have to know. Look at this packaging. Can you recreate this on a mass scale? This is outrageous packaging. Outrageous packaging indeed. A walk with the devil. Wow. Do you have a website where people can buy these, or are you just kind of getting started? I'm very curious. A walk with the devil. It's a great name, by the way. I love the name. I love the packaging. Can this be recreated on a mass scale? A Ride in the Woods. Also not a bad name. Very artistic, Miss Huttenstone. A Ride in the Woods. Interesting. Uh-oh. Get back in your home. Get back in your pretty home. And then finally we have Spring Tonic. Spring Tonic. So this ought to be fun. Whoops, I don't want to open this. You just come out the bottom. Spring Tonic. Interesting stuff. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I will get to know these and do some reviews on the channel. Designed and hand powered by J. Huttenstone. That's awesome. That is awesome. If you have a link or something, leave it in the comments and I'll pin your information, Miss Huttenstone, and we will see if people want to, dive into your work. It's good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, let's talk about today the early impression video, the very first video on, I got stuff everywhere, very first video on January Scent Project. So first of all, let me tell you what I know about John Biebel, and it's not very much, but I know that he is a Fragrantica writer, or he was a Fragrantica writer. I don't know if he still is. He is a very artistic fellow. Apparently him and Carlos from Brooklyn Fragrance Lovers were pretty close friends, and he was a very artistic chap. And artist, he was an artist and stuff like that, and he got into kind of making these perfumes, so he wanted to make his own house, and January Scent Project was his idea of starting his own house. His very first fragrance was Smolder Rose, apparently. Smolder Rose was his very first fragrance. And let's see if there's a little blurb about the house that I can read to you. January Scent Project. Oh, sorry, John, your work is blocked on my... Here it is. The January Scent Project is a perfume creation endeavor housed in a converted mill building in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, USA. Pawtucket. Reminds me of Family Guy, Peter. Didn't he live in Pawtucket? It aims to use scent as an extension of other artistic media, approaching the mingling of smells with the sensibilities of painting and music, but with an equal embracing of technology and modernity. The project is the creation of John Biebel, graduate of the Cooper Union, where he studied painting and photography. He has lived in New York, London, UK, and now Boston, where he divides his time between perfume creation, painting, writing, and technology research pursuits. So they have a lot of different fragrances. Instantly, the first one I wanted to go to was this, Burvuvu. And the reason the first one I wanted to go to was Burvuvu, well, a couple reasons, but the main reason is that this has castoreum in it. And castoreum is one of my favorite, absolute favorite ingredients of all time. So here's the thing. I've got about a 6-hour dry down here. I have since reapplied my first spray. I had about an 8-hour dry down here, 8 or 9 hours, but I just reapplied before the video. So I've got to know the fragrance, and I wore it to bed yesterday. So I got to get an idea of the path of the fragrance. I've experienced the opening multiple times, but keep in mind, I don't own a bottle. This is just an early impression. So when you first spray, you look at this fragrance and what do you think? You think this is going to be an ambery, right? Resinous fragrance. And there are some touches of that, but interestingly enough, the opening is very green to me. I get a lot of green, earthy, forest floor aspects in the fragrance when you first spray, especially with such a dark juice. And that dark ambery juice, kind of the smell that you start to expect the fragrance to smell like. When you look at this juice, you have almost like an expectation of the juice, right? And that expectation lingers in the background for a little bit, especially when you first spray. You get a lot of the aromatic bits coming to the forefront. You get the green basil, and that green basil makes it almost very sharp. I've heard some people say the word minty, although I don't think it smells minty. I think it smells more aromatic in the opening, and green. And the green aspect is full of volume, and also it's like full volume. So it's full of volume and it's full volume. It feels like the green aspect like fills in all the holes. You know what I mean? There are any holes in this fragrance, the green parts are what fills it, are what fills the opening when you first spray. For the first half an hour or so, the green element really takes hold. And you're kind of thinking, wow, this fragrance is going in a different direction. And the mental image that came to mind while wearing this is, initially, is imagine that you're standing in a forest and someone has a chainsaw next to you, okay? No, it's not a horror film, but someone has a chainsaw next to you. And the first thing that they cut is a very green vine. You ever seen like some of those jungle, you're like moving through the rainforest and people are going through areas of the rainforest which haven't been explored in many, many years. And they almost have to hack their way through like these vines. And the vines are thick, right? Thick vines. That's the first part of the opening. Imagine taking that chainsaw, and the very first thing they cut is a big green vine, and you cut it in half. And it's a small branch. So imagine this vine being cut, sawed in half, and you're able to kind of take the half that got cut and just peer inside of it, right? And you peer inside of the green vine, and you see kind of the inside. And whenever it got cut, of course, it released this aromatic green, like, burst. And that's how the fragrance opens up. Now, it's continually changing, though. So then they take their chainsaw and they move to trees. They've moved on from vines. They've moved on to trees in the forest. But not just any tree. They move to a young sapling, okay? And the sapling is a tree that hasn't yet come of age. And let's say the wood is still very malleable. You ever see some of those trees that have wood that is almost green looking? Almost the wood is like itself is green. Like, back in the day when parents used to still beat the shit out of their kids for doing a bad thing. You ever, been friends with a kid whose parents used to like make him go cut the tree cut the branch off of the tree himself and bring it in to get the beating? You ever had a friend like that? And what the parent wants in that scenario is like not a big fat heavy branch, but one of those thin ones, right? One of those green, almost like you can bend it, right? Like licorice, you can bend it or something, and it makes this whoop, this whoosh sound. That's kind of the part 2 of this. Is the chainsaw has now moved on from vines to trees, but you're going still for the smaller branches and maybe even the greener parts of the tree. It's a newer part of the tree that was just grown. You chop it off, it's easy to cut, but you still have kind of this this sapling, hasn't come of age, green tinge to the wood, right? And that is part 2 of how the fragrance begins to progress. So at the beginning, you get a lot of that big green vine, and then it starts to smell a little bit more like wood, but not completely mature wood yet. Now you've moved on to the sapling, and then finally, once, let's say and you do the same exercise. Once the, let's say, sapling's limb from the tree is cut, you take it and you peer inside and you see how the wood is still kind of green and new and malleable. That's part 2. Part 3 is now they move to a full-size tree. And you move to the full-size tree, and the full-size tree is, of course, a cedar tree. Okay, and in this fragrance, there's apparently 3 types of cedar. One is Canadian white cedar, one is red cedar, and one is Texas cedar. Okay, and those 3 types of cedars, once they take the crown, once the chainsaw cuts into that tree, and you get a big fat cedar hunk, mature cedar, not green this time, but wood. It takes the crown, it takes the throne, it never relinquishes it. This is now a cedar scent from here on out. And that time horizon, I would say, happens within the first 45 minutes or so. So within the first 15 to 20 minutes, you get that really green, vine-like smell. Within the next 20 minutes or so, you get that, sapling green tree smell. It's like it's converting from a vine to a tree to a full-grown cedar. Within 45 minutes or an hour, that cedar note comes forth full force. And once it takes control of the fragrance, it almost never relinquishes it for the full length of the fragrance. It's a cedar fragrance from here on out. And you get different, so imagine you're traveling through the forest, okay? And you are forced to carry this log of cedar, right? Look at the picture. Look at the picture of that guy carrying the logs with the mushrooms on them. At first, if you never smelled this scent, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird picture, right? Almost looks like he's doing forced manual labor. Look how sad he looks. But then, when you smell the scent, you're like, you know what? That is actually a fantastic image of what the scent smells like. Because here's the forest I was telling you about. Down here, here's the trees. And look, one of the cedars, even a red cedar. And I assume one of these is a Texas and one of them is supposed to be a Canadian white cedar. And you get different aspects of the cedar. So again, they claim to use the 3 types of cedar. And so this triumvirate of cedars kind of takes control of the perfume. And you can really start to notice just how vivid and woody and clean the cedar profile is. Now remember, there's a lot of animalic facets to this fragrance. So you will get a little bit of rose in the opening, but when I watched reviews of this, a lot of people talked about, oh, the rose just pops and I smell this giant rose note. I never did. I mean, maybe a ghost of a rose, maybe just an outline of a rose, maybe like someone quickly snatches one rose petal off the rose and you smell it briefly and it's gone. But yeah, I don't get this huge rose opening people talk about. No, not for me. But everyone's nose is different, of course. But there is a little bit of rose in here. And like I said, you start to notice this clean cedar profile. So apparently the Canadian white cedar is a cedar that does offer that very aromatic, clean type of cedar profile, if you will. And there's also this aromatic freshness that comes from other bits and parts of the fragrance. So you have geranium, which geranium can sometimes come across as smelling rosy. So you have both geranium and rose in this fragrance. And right now, if I kind of focused in on it, I feel like I could really smell the rose. But part of my brain is actually telling me, no, that's amber in the background. It's not a real rose note. It's kind of more ambery because of the color of the juice. Like I'm thinking it should be an amber scent, right? And also to add to that aromatic freshness in the opening is ginger. And the ginger here smells very fresh, very natural, very well done. It just adds this, it adds this element of freshness to that aromatic green opening I was telling you about. Remember I was telling you the basil and the green notes kind of really just pop in the opening and that it's not what you expect. It doesn't smell like the color of the juice when you first spray. And it almost will shock you a little bit because you're expecting one thing and it smells completely different upon first spray. But as the hours tick by, it goes more and more to what I would expect a fragrance that looks like this to smell like, in my opinion. And so it adds this fresh leaves on the tree type feel, you know, when early in the opening. And then there's an earthy element, because remember, let's say you're walking through the jungle. So imagine you're this guy, right? And you're walking through the jungle, and on the floor of that jungle, because they're, you know, probably you're not going to be carrying wood that looks like that. But let's just say you're just carrying some normal pieces, cuts of cedar wood. You're walking through the jungle, and on the jungle floor, there is this earthy mushroom type feel. And I don't know if I would have picked out mushroom. Like if you would have blindfolded me and said, is there mushroom in this fragrance? I probably would have said, I don't know. Maybe because you're asking, I would say yes, but would I pick out mushroom? No, I don't think I would. But the mushroom just gives it this kind of, like it conveys this forest floor earthiness, right? Is what the mushroom does. Because the mushroom is a fungus, and it just gives it this aspect of being in nature and in the forest, right? And that's really, I think, what this fragrance feels like from start to finish for me. Is it's a journey in the forest, and with that very green aromatic opening to the cedar really taking full. And this is a very well done cedar scent. Very well done. I will tell you that. I don't think I've ever smelled anything that smells quite like this. And I like woody scents, and I have a lot of woody fragrances in my collection, but I don't know if I've ever quite smelled anything that smells exactly like this. There is also this honey note, but the note of honey, it's not the honey that I have a self-professed love for. You guys know I absolutely love my honey from like the 80s, that animalic, pissy honey that just grabs you. This is not that at all. This honey is kind of more an aspect of the honey that I would say works more as like a partner. So it partners up with the amber. They work in tandem with each other to give it this ever so slightly sweet ambery aspect. And for so far, for the first hour, let's say, of the fragrance, while we're still talking about the earlier opening of the fragrance, let's say, the honey and the amber kind of just work together but remain in the background, while the greenness, the aromatic, the woods are kind of playing center stage. But eventually, they will begin to come more and more to the forefront as the fragrance really dries down, especially deep into the dry down. So once you start talking 8 hours into the fragrance, that's where you'll really start to smell that ambery, honeyed aspect to me. And the amber aspect to this fragrance is also slightly powdery, I should mention. To my nose, there is a slight powdery, musky swirl kind of surrounding the cedar. And because remember, the cedar is the forefront of the fragrance. That is the note du jour. That is the note that is being focused on in this fragrance for sure. But the amber and the honey, again, kind of work in tandem to add this ever so slightly ambery, but also powdery. And that's the part that I haven't really heard very many people talk about, that powdery aspect to the way that the amber is done in the background. It's very well done. But I haven't really heard very many people go into that level of detail with the fragrance. So this ambery, powdery, musky swirl that kind of surrounds the cedar and adds this touch of elegance and a little bit of softness, almost like the ambery, honeyed muskiness is doing what the job of, let's say, iris would do, right? You know how iris usually kind of rounds fragrances out and adds this 3D element to them? Here, the amber and the honey and the muskiness kind of team up to do the job of iris. Because if you put iris in this, I think it would take away from that woody jungle aspect to the fragrance. Whereas having the amber and the, that slightly powdery amber with the honey and the musk does the job, but still keeps you in the territory, right? Touch of elegance is the way that I would describe it. Otherwise, this fragrance could be considered very heavy-handed without that little bit of touch of spicy elegance, right? And so once you get to the 2-hour mark, I would say that's when the 2-hour mark is really when I notice that the Texas cedar tends to jump forward. And I'm guessing it's a Texas cedar. I'm not some cedar expert, but if I had to guess, I would guess it was the Texas or the red cedar that gives off this this sort of pencil shaving like vibe is my guess. It jumps off my skin with that pencil-like quality, and I can almost swear that I can even smell the eraser on the pencil. You ever had like a pencil, like that's been put away? Most of us watching this video are probably long removed from elementary school or junior high or high school when you used pencils. I don't use pencils anymore. I always use pens now. So whenever I run into a pencil again, you smell it and it brings back these memories of being younger in school, right? But many people don't think about the fact the eraser smells as well. I swear to God, the cedar in this, I can even smell the eraser on the pencil is what it smells like to me. It smells like I'm smelling the cedar, the pencil shavings, and also the eraser. It's absolutely insane how the mind just, goes back to those older memories. But the dryness of the fragrance is very apparent at this point as well. I feel like the cedar, the Texas cedar or the red cedar, let's see what red cedar is supposed to smell like. I can't say, again, I probably should have done this research before, but these are supposed to be just early impression videos. Red cedar smell. Birdhouse. The odor of a birdhouse. Interesting. A juniper tree. The red cedar is technically a juniper tree. You don't say. Atlas cedar is another tree used in the making of cedar wood essential oils. Okay, interesting. Fresh pine could smell like. Natural deodorizer. I do have some cedar wood blocks that you're supposed to put in your nice shoes after you're done wearing them. That must be why. Interesting. I don't think it's red cedar. It must be the Texas cedar. The Texas cedar must be the one. See, my inkling was correct. Texas cedar is probably the one that has that pencil shaving-like smell is my guess. So imagine, what I was thinking? This guy kind of holding these cedar woods, traveling through the forest. And I was thinking, I had this flashback to the movie Free Willy. Remember when Free Willy was like being transported and they were like pouring water on Free Willy to keep him wet because he was out of the water, obviously, being transported on some truck. And I was imagining, I was imagining this wood as Free Willy, and the amber and the mushroom and the henna and the honey like being poured on the cedar to keep it moist, because otherwise it would just be too dry. It could come across a very dry cedar if you just isolate that note. But all the other notes are working to keep it moisturized, if you will. And as the hours continue to tick by, the Texas cedar, I really think, just continues to kind of shine and give off this pencil shaving quality. And, as the hours ticked by, I tried to think of some imageries of that pencil shaving quality. You know what came to mind? Do you remember being in elementary school and having to sharpen your pencil, and let's say your electric sharpener went out, so you had to use one of the handheld ones, and whenever you, if it's full, if people don't empty it properly or something, it gets full, and the piece of pencil shaving, that curl at the very end of the pencil just kind of falls on the desk, and you can pick it up and it's like paper thin, but it's a piece of the pencil, right? It has that pencil-like smell. That is what came to mind. This huge image of Texas cedar, but also a bit of gentle dryness, almost papyrus quality. And so, finally, some interesting points to make, though. So finally, in the late dry down, 6+ hours in, after this goes on for a little bit, 6+ hours in, you start to notice that the fragrance begins to turn almost like this red wine plum smell. Again, never heard anyone talk about it except for maybe I'm the only one who gets that smell into the late dry down. But on the other reviews I watched, did not hear anyone talk about that red wine plum smell. It's a little bit of a strange smell as the hours tick by. That red wine plum fruity smell. I have no clue where it comes from. There's no fruity notes really listed here. But I do get a little bit of this red wine plum smell that that comes through. So upsides and downsides for me. Is this a good fragrance? Absolutely, 100%. I have enjoyed wearing it today immensely. Would I buy a bottle? That's a tougher question because nowadays it's so hard to move me, you know, and I know I sound like I'm some snotty bourgeoisie fragrance enthusiast, like it takes so much to move me now, but it really does. It you know, it's if I would have smelled this a year ago, full bottle, 100%. Now I'm kind of like, do I want a full bottle? You know, this might be one where if I decide to go back to the house, depending on how the rest of the fragrances come along, I think he has a deal where you can get like 3 of the 30 ml bottles, the small one. That's all I need. 30 mils is enough for me when you have a big collection. And so maybe I'll do like one of the 30 ml sets where you can pick like 3 1-ounce bottles or something, you know, something like that. The biggest issue, the reason that the thing that most disappointed me with this scent, I will say, the reason why it is not a full buy instantly for me is whenever I was watching some of the reviews, many people I remember saying, don't worry, it doesn't open up too animalic. It opens up pretty smooth and clean and aromatic, and, you know, you don't have to worry so much about that castoreum note, thank God. And I'm on the exact other side of the spectrum. I'm going, where the hell is the castoreum note? It's there, obviously, but it's really, really muted down. Like, I want my castoreum to, you know, jump out and grab you. I want it to be animalic and challenging and in your face. And I want the civet, the castoreum, the animalic notes. And that's what I was hoping to get from this. Instead, I ended up getting a very well blended, easy to wear, woody, spicy, you know, green, aromatic cedar fragrance with some ambery, powdery, musky touches in the background. And I'm just going, come on, castoreum, bring it on, you know, and everyone else is going, thank God there's not a lot of castoreum in here, and I'm the exact opposite. And so I think if, you know, you could have taken the castoreum and done what they did in something like this, oh God, I'm in love with this, by the way. I just want to smell this again is all. Fuck. You know, or some of these other, you know, Antaeus or, and list some of my favorite castoreum scents where they really growl front and center. And it's more, if this was a bespoke fragrance for me, this could easily be a bespoke fragrance, but I want you to amp that castoreum up by about a factor of 10. You know, I want it to be big and bold and animalic with that beautiful cedar and, honey and amp up the honey and make it pissy and animalic. This could be a hands down vintage ram duck fragrance, but it's very wearable. It doesn't have those aspects. And so because of that, I was actually a little bit disappointed. That's one of the things that I was really hoping for, is that castoreum was going to jump out and be animalic. And it's not. It's just not. It's at worst, it never gets below a low boil. You know, the animalic facet to this is extremely soft and gentle. And so yes, I mean, that's that is, it could be a pro for some people. For me, it's actually a con, as I want those animalic scents now. I crave those animalic scents. Although my tolerance, you could say, tolerance may be a bad word, but it may also be the perfect word. My tolerance for animalics may be much higher than the average bear. So, you know, for most people, this may be perfect. This may be absolutely perfect. But for me, it's one of those, I'm glad I got to do a video for you guys. I'm glad I got to know it and understand it. And it's step 1 in understanding John Biebel's work before he joins the channel. So if you have experience with the House of January scent project, do please leave a comment below. If you know Burvuvu, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorites from the House of January scent projects are. We'll probably do a live stream where we blind sniff. Well, not blind, but where we sniff a bunch of these all at once. And then maybe I'll do another couple first impression videos like this. And within the next week or two, I will have gone through the whole set. And then we can have them on the channel. So, I appreciate everybody watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, all the stuff you're supposed to do that I'm supposed to say as a YouTuber. So thanks for the support, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the review. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.